Who made that intro? Oh, that's so nice. Okay. Oh, hi. Doing well, and yourself? Oh, okay. Well, hi, I'm Nelson, and I am a pixel geek. Been geeking out about no code since the early days of Webflow, before I even knew it had a term. But yeah, just overall geek. Why am I nervous? I stopped counting. I stopped counting. Just if anyone wants to count for me, please let me know. But yeah, let's see here. Let me just go backward. Okay, yeah. So I'm a customer support specialist over at Webflow. Been at Webflow for 5 years and been using Webflow for the past 7 years since closed beta. And I can't speak enough about it. I bring it around the world and I talk about it as much as possible because it has changed my life. And my whole purpose now is to I have all these good feelings of like, man, this no code tool can really, really help people like build awesome stuff. And I want to share it. And so that's my whole passion now is to share as much as I can with as many people as I can in hopes that they get to do what they want to do with their careers. And that's just me in a nutshell. And I'll just plug it right now where I'm doing that mostly now is through my community website that just launched 2 weeks ago, which is or a week ago. Yeah, which is pixelgeek.community. And so yeah, so check it out, and you'll learn more about the community and its mission. Hold on. People in my chat are saying they can't hear you. It's the can't hear Aaron, but they can hear still audio issues. Wait, did you unmute yourself in Streamlabs? Do you see levels? I hear you. Oh, remember you turned it off on loopback? Yeah, turn it back on. See if that works.
Testing.
That's okay.
You think? Can you
Well,
guys
let's
hear me
see
now?
here. We can hear Nelson, can't hear Aaron.
Even now when I'm speaking?
Well, there's like a 30-second delay in live stream, so
Oh, okay. Okay, so
hopefully,
Penny seems to hear me okay.
yeah.
Okay, so we're back. Let's go back. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to have to live with this little echo. So if you hear me stuttering, that's why.
Technical problems. I totally know. I totally understand.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
essentially a year and a half ago, I cold emailed Nelson and asking him how to set up my live stream, and you were nice enough to actually answer. And if that wasn't for that email, I don't think I'd be streaming today. So this is kind of like a collision of worlds, if you will. Similar to you, I'm kind of passionate about helping folks build on Airtable, and it's really changed my life. And so I think we have that common shared goal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's what happens when you just reach out to someone or respond to someone that's has a question. You'll never know what a small little gesture can do. And it's my way of giving back because someone actually did that to me when I was really at one of my low points in my career
Mm,
when someone actually noticed. And I wrote a blog post about this, and I'll send you a link to it so you can put in show notes or whatever. But I was at a low point, and someone noticed that I wasn't on the Webflow forums for
mm.
like a couple of months, and he just posted something like, "I don't know if this is okay to post or if it's not part of the guidelines, but I just want to say like." Is where is Pixel Geek? He's been an active member here. I haven't seen him in a while. The fact that one person noticed changed my whole mind. And I was like, all right. And then I worked harder from that point on, and I was able to get this job at Webflow. And I'm like, now I need to give it back. So the fact that you're doing all this streaming stuff and you're going through it, and this is, I'm looking at your notes and it says number 19. So this is your 19th live stream. Great job. Keep going.
Well, the
Once you
funny
hit
part
a,
is I work at Airtable now. So we actually
yes,
both kind of ended up at the company we advocated for. That's great.
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Anyway, that's just me like
Um,
spreading my joy and
yeah.
yeah. But yeah.
Let's last technical thing here. Let me try to turn off the Yeti. Can folks still hear me? Can you hear me, Nelson?
I can hear you, but I'm people are saying that they can hear you when that was on.
Yeah, I know I can imagine, but now I have both the Yeti and you in the audio. So let me know, folks, if you can. I see the both levels, so it should be fine. I
Okay.
see kind of that audio. So let me
Okay.
know if you folks can't hear Nelson or me, and we're going to kind of do this on the fly. So this is the first time. Okay, so awesome. We've got Nicholas. Let me know in the chat from my chat and where you're joining us from. If this is your first ever Automate All the Things, usually we don't have such a lengthy introduction, but I thought for this time, we have a special guest, so I thought we'd do it proper. So Nelson, really excited to have you here. And yeah, so our topic is Webflow and Airtable. So both of our passions kind of, in one. And so our kind of what I want to show you. I know you're working on Pixel Geek Community, which involves a lot of folks submitting information to your Webflow website that you eventually want to put on your website. So whether
Yes.
that's job postings or member profiles or just any type of content that you need to manage and upload to Webflow.
Mhm.
Well, we're going to show you, or we're going to show everyone. I'm going to show you. I know you're particularly excited about this, but I'm going to show
Yeah.
everyone how you could manage that content in Airtable. So what that means is, let's say someone submits a video and you want to kind of approve that video before it goes onto your
Yeah.
website. Well, Airtable is a great interface to do that.
Yeah.
And what we're going to kind of work on is that glue between Airtable and Webflow to make it really easy once it's in Airtable to be pushed to Webflow. Does
Yeah.
that?
So a little
Sure.
backstory on how this stream idea came about is that I was talking to Aaron. I'm like, how do I do XYZ? Because I'm trying to whenever someone submits any content to the Pixel Geek community, it goes through a Zap and then just sends me a notification on Slack saying, hey, someone submitted content. And then I have to actually open up Webflow CMS. I
Right.
have to actually open up Webflow and then go open up the collection manager and then look through the data. And because it's set as draft, and if I'm like, okay, this is good, I'm going to publish it, then I have to publish. But wouldn't it be cool if I didn't have to actually open up Webflow at all? And then Aaron's like, yeah, you can do that through Airtable, where the data gets sent from Webflow to Airtable, and then if you approve of it, all you have to do is press a button inside of Airtable, and then it gets pushed live on Webflow. And I'm like, I so to be perfectly honest, never used Airtable.
Okay.
So I need to learn this. So I'm just learning with you, the audience. So
Awesome.
that's the project for today that I want to learn with you all.
Awesome. So let me know in the chat how familiar you are with Airtable. Probably more for like, Nelson, let me know from your chat how familiar folks are. And that'll kind of pace myself throughout making sure that folks understand the kind of basic building blocks of Airtable. So, folks in Nelson's chat, please just drop like kind of like, I'm super familiar with Airtable, I'm unfamiliar with Airtable, and I can't see the chat, but please relay what that level is to me. I know folks on my channel are probably a little familiar with Airtable. And so I'm going to kind of make sure that folks, kind of understand. So our goal today is to never touch the CMS, right? So our goal for today is folks submit something on our website, and then it drops into Airtable. And then from Airtable, we kind of approve it, and then it shows up on our Webflow website. Okay, so that is the goal for today. So I introduced Automate All the Things. It's a stream that was brought to you originally by Nelson, or thanks to Nelson, I should say. So I do want to kind of introduce Webflow, Airtable, oh my God, and talk a little bit about the process here. So Airtable is a low-code collaboration app creation platform. So essentially, initially, it looks just like a spreadsheet, but lets you create kind of custom applications. And what our application is going to do today is let us approve of videos that are submitted to our website. Okay, so I'm going to kind of walk you through the structure of our base. So Airtable is organized into tables. Tables contain information, right? Very simply put. So we have our video submissions. So this is anything that's submitted, comes into here. Quick question. Go ahead, Nelson.
Side note.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of YouTube thumbnails that has a wacky face.
Okay.
But then FinSuite used that photo, and I'm like, oh, well, that is my face. Okay, I'll let it.
I can change it. And second,
No,
all
it's okay.
complaints go to
I just want to know,
Joe.
where did
I have
Joe
no
get that?
idea. I have no idea.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm that YouTuber. Anyways, move on.
what you'll see in like folks joining is I am absolutely terrible at designing anything, and so I kind of have FinSuite do all of that work. So at least the things look good on my channel, but all of that work is done by FinSuite. So that's why I have you. And whenever I'm like, oh, how do I do this in Webflow? I kind of look up one of your videos. So folks seem to be somewhat familiar with Airtable on my side. So I'll start maybe with like a quick overview of this base. And I think as we're doing that, it'll kind of explain what Airtable is. So essentially, every single submission is going to end up in this table. And I'll kind of, the next section is how do we put data into here? And I'll explain that in a little bit. So then we have a status. Right. So what I've done is that each field is an element of information I want to track for each one of my videos. So just like the CMS has those different fields, right? Like it's link, the header, right? So this is actually just a reflection of the CMS. The only difference is actually it's much more user friendly, right? So when I come in, I can see all of my videos and I could be like, okay, this one, I'm rejecting it. And I just set as rejected. And then we're going to trigger a bunch of automations that's going to let that person know that we've rejected it, right? So it's just more user-friendly. But when you think about it from a structural perspective, it is exactly like the CMS. Does that make sense? So what I've kind of have, I have an email, I have video title, I have the video link, I've got a thumbnail, an image, little description. And then I'm going to try to explain this in Webflow terms. We have a multi-reference field. Right.
That's the one that gets me like,
right.
That gives me anxiety. Like, yeah. Oh man.
Oh, it's super. We'll get to it in like 30, 45 minutes.
For you.
No, it'll
Teach
be
me.
Exactly. I think if by the end of the video, folks here, understand multi-reference field, I think this will be the video on how to do it. And I think I've kind of simplified it relatively well at the end. So
Nice.
there's a question on an overview of Airtable. What would you use Airtable over Google Sheets? Airtable is kind of low floor, high ceiling. So it starts out as a spreadsheet, and I think that's the feel that you'll get right now. However, as you level up, you can really create kind of applications that live on top of Airtable. And the first big difference is actually this concept of linked record, right? So right now I have type of video, which is a linked record. So I actually have a separate table that has all of my types of videos. And the reason you should think about this is kind of like, this is not a great use case of what a linked record is, but imagine you have companies as a table. And then you have another table that is contacts. In Sheets, you have no way of saying this company has these contacts.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you think about it, maybe project and tasks, maybe it's a content campaign, social media post. So really that structure, that linked record is fundamental in the difference between Airtable and kind of what I'll call spreadsheet. So Airtable is not a spreadsheet, it's actually an application builder. So for instance, I have my tools as well. So that's when I create a video, what we're going to do in Webflow, I have saying what tools are in this video, right? And so if I go into a new video submission right here, I can actually just link the tools that are associated to that video. But you can think of this as companies and contacts, companies and projects. Here, I'll give you a maybe a more usual use case of Airtable. What is something maybe you want to project management or content calendar, kind of, let's say content production, and you want to do a blog editorial camp. I've never seen this template. This one has one table for some reason. That's fun. Podcast editorial calendar, right? So we've got episodes, transcripts, the guests that were in each episode. And so you can link and see, okay, Jim was on utility designing the tap book. And when I click on that, I can see all of that information about that specific episode, right? So it's creating links and structures within your data that you can reference really quickly, and kind of ability to structure data, but that is also intuitive. So it's a relational database that you can use as a person. Does that make sense, Nelson?
Oh yeah. And I am enjoying your passion for Airtable because it's like I just like my passion for Webflow, and it's like, oh, this is fun this is gonna be fun to learn. I'm in.
Right.
Now show me Sensei.
Right.
Show me Jedi Master. Let's go.
So we've got kind of video submissions that has all the information that reflects structurally every one of my CMS items, right? So I've got the name, the URL, the header, some video notes. I've got that, tools, which you saw as a linked record over there. So we're just taking our CMS and we're building it in Airtable. That way those two can communicate. Now, the first question is, how do I get data into my Airtable, right? So how do I actually give folks the ability to input? We're not going to do that manually, obviously. So what you can do in Airtable is create a form based on your table.
Okay.
So I've already gone and done that. Is this concept of views. Views are set specific ways of seeing your information, one of which is a view. So another example is this little Kanban view. So this is going to structure all of my videos by their status. So I can just move information and say, you know what, this one is good. I'm accepting it. So I can see all of that information around that record and move it and accept it. This later is what's going to trigger our workflow. We're actually going to just go boom, done, and then it's going to get uploaded to the CMS. And so another way, we're going to call this Kanban by status. Another way is just to create a form. So this is, you can add an image, customize it. What I kept is, who are you? What is your video called? Can you give me a YouTube link and upload a thumbnail, short description, tell me what type of video it is, what tools are included in that video. But you can create this form however you'd like, right? So whatever information is in your table, you can include, and I've hidden the information that I care about. So that status, that's up to me to decide. That CMS ID and reject, and I'll explain what those are in just a moment. So those are just different fields, different parts of my workflow. So now I can open this form and I can embed it into Airtable, into Webflow. So I've got this little form.
Would you
Go ahead.
suggest embedding the form, or
Not necessarily. So
could you like take the HTML of those fields and then send it with the form action?
So what I would recommend is there's this little you can actually here when you share the form, there should be a little HTML. Actually, you could just embed it. You can just embed this link. That said, what I would recommend is there's two options. You can just use this form, or you can create a Webflow form and just take that form submission and send it to Airtable via Zapier. Right?
But you can skip Zapier by embedding through here.
Yes, exactly. So the difference is that
Zapier to send it from Airtable to Webflow CMS.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you want to control, so the decision factor is, do you want control over your form? If you want full styling control, then you create it in Webflow, and you just simply, when that submission happens on Webflow, map the different variables to Airtable, creating, and I think I did that in a previous stream, so I'm happy to put that in the show notes if I did. And so now what we can do is just embed this form. So this is where you come in, because I've got a page here. Submit a video. And it's kind of weird because I know a lot about the Airtable, the Webflow CMS, but very little around the actual front end of Webflow. So I've got an embed here. And what I'm going to change is the source. I think this should work. Let's delete that. Like that. Oh no.
Oh, sad face.
Oh no.
Sad face.
Oh, it's because it's an iframe. How can I just embed this? Share form. Oh, there's actually embed this. Oh, there we go. You would think I'd know this. There we go. There's the code given to me. So I can just copy paste this code, go into Webflow, save and close. And if all went well there we go.
Yay. Okay.
All right. Okay. So this form, obviously style it much better than I did. You submit your video. We've got Connor in the house. It's good that Connor is here because he's the expert at multi-reference fields. So he is the original creator of the Zap that I'm going to show you in a bit. Nice. So hey, Connor, good to see you. Okay, so we have our form. Now you could imagine this. Let me publish this so we can actually go ahead and play around with it. Sorry for moving you there, Nelson.
It's all good.
So let's go ahead and try this out. And we could submit information, right? So this lives and it's connected. So let's say it's a video, YouTube link. Let's give youtube.com/test123. Actually, let's give it a real, because let's give it a real YouTube link here. It doesn't matter what it is.
First result is
it's us. Hopefully it's us. There we go. It's us.
Oh, there it goes.
We can. I'm afraid of there we go. So we're submitting this right here. Submit a video. I'm going to put that thumbnail you like so much. Let me
Wait, you copied a YouTube thumbnail.
Oh, really?
Not an actual YouTube URL.
Okay.
So
does this work?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, that's it.
This is much easier with two people because you can catch errors on the fly, you know? Short description, a great video. Type of video. Okay, so this is where that kind of multi-reference you should be thinking of, right? So I have 3 options. This is a single
Ooh.
reference field in CMS. So this is actually referencing those linked records. So you can add them as you go. Anytime you add to that new table, new options, they'll show up in this linked record. So I'm going to call this a live stream. And in my CMS, if I come here and I go to my CMS structure, you'll notice that for every element, I have that same kind of single select. Right? It's right here, that category. So that's a single reference field in Airtable. Yeah. And it's kind of a linked record in Airtable, and it's a single reference field in Webflow. And then tools, let's say this, and this is a multi-reference field in your language. This is a linked record in Airtable language. So let's go into Zapier and Airtable. Okay. So let's say those are the 2 tools, but you could imagine this being a categorization. It could be whatever kind of structure you need in your data in Webflow can be replicated with that. So let me submit that. And there, if we come here into live stream, we go into all submissions. We now have that submission in our table. So we didn't need Zapier or anything like that. It's automatically in our, and we have all that same information. We've got that thumbnail, that linked record, all that good stuff. There's a bunch of stuff. Let me actually come here, which is the reviewing. Let's say, let's set this as reviewing. So let's say you kind of come into this workflow and you want to say, okay, this one, we've just received it. We're putting it as received. And I have this view. A view is just a filter. It's saying, okay, only show me records where status is received. Yep. That way it's easier to kind of process the ones you need to work through. And a little bit of magic here. So let's say you want to kind of like, okay, great. Let's review this one. You can actually go into blocks, which are kind of little things that let you update information, visualize information. You can actually have a preview. So this will start playing the video that you're hovering. So you can actually review it directly from Airtable. So if I click on this URL preview, it'll start playing right here. I don't want that to happen. So right here, you could just start playing it from Airtable. So this is a little URL preview block, which lets you embed actual videos into your base. Very useful for content management or things like that. So you'll never need to leave the base to actually do all your workflow. And I've added some statistics. You can see how many videos you've rejected, accepted, and received, different tools that are used, and even kind of have a zoom in onto the ones you still need to review. So this is just kind of like a command HQ, if you will, that you can see all of that information at once. And you can visualize different stuff. It's really cool.
That's neat.
So that was a quick introduction to blocks. But did that make sense quickly?
Yes. And
so now we've kind of understand how to use an Airtable form. So you create your structure in Airtable, you embed the form on your website, and it'll submit directly to Airtable. Now, as I mentioned, you can also do that as a Webflow form, send it to Zapier, and then send it to Airtable. Relatively easy. We'll only have to do once. Okay. So let's now start talking about how do we review these videos, and then once they're accepted, push them to Webflow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So most of the work is essentially kind of managing this status, right? Yeah. So you can create options, right? So I've created received, accepted, and rejected, but you can be, held for review, whatever your structure is. But essentially what we want is that when something is moved to accepted, it's published to the Webflow website.
Yeah.
Right? However, so let's just kind of create that automation.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let me know in the chat if folks are following here. I feel like I've gone maybe a little bit fast at the beginning, but feels okay as well. Cool. All right. So we're going to use Zapier. And essentially what we want to do is take the information from Airtable and just send it to Webflow using Zapier.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're a pro at Zapier, or getting there anyway. I saw what, like 50 zaps in your Pixel Geek community.
As with
there.
everything I do, I'm just stumbling my way through it and learning at the same time.
So do you think folks are very familiar with Zapier on your stream?
Somewhat.
Okay.
Not sure. But yeah, if you're familiar with Zapier, let me know in my chat. But yeah.
Awesome. So Zapier is tools that let you connect. Well, it's a tool that lets you connect different applications. So send data from one to another. Matt in my chat asks, can you use other automation software like Parabola? The answer is yes. I actually have a video on how to deploy to Webflow from Parabola on a timer. So let's say you want to deploy every hour or every 2 hours, and that's very useful for, managing multiple landing pages. Or what you can do is use Parabola to bring data into Airtable, such as your analytics. So let's say once you've published this video, you want to get Google Analytics data and let folks know how many views they've gotten, right? So I know Connor did that, I think, with Unicorn Factory, or at least was a big fan of when I did that automation. So that is in my live streams. If you check Airtable, ranking blog posts on Webflow using Google Analytics and Parabola. So that was a quick introduction to another one of my favorite tools, which is Parabola, but we're talking about Zapier. So Zapier is, has kind of 2 steps: action and triggers and actions. So triggers are what need to happen in a certain application for the automation to begin, right? So what we want is something happening in Airtable, namely that we've set the kind of status of that video submission to accepted to begin our automation. So action triggers are always, what do you need to happen, or when do you want to trigger this automation? So in our case, that's going to be Airtable. We're going to have new record in view, right? So this views are set specific ways of looking at your information. In our case, we're going to create a view that only has those submissions that have been accepted. So whenever something comes into that criteria, it's going to trigger this zap. And what this zap is going to do is that it's going to publish to Webflow. Make sense?
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and do that. So we need to create a view that only has accepted videos in it. So what happens is, if we go into this Kanban and you move, say, you know what? I've reviewed this one. I'm moving it to accepted. You want that to be triggering your workflow.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and create a new grid view. This is going to be accepted videos. And it's only going to have show me records. So I just selected that filter. Show me records where status is accepted. So what's going to happen here is that whenever something comes into this view, any new record in this view, Zapier is going to be like, oh, we need to do something, right? So it's going to take the information from that record and send it to Webflow.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you can be as granular as you'd like here. You can put multiple, maybe it's when it's been reviewed and it's been more than 5 days that it's been submitted. Maybe it's been reviewed by 2 people. You need 2 check marks. Whatever that criteria is that you'd like to trigger that workflow on, you can use this kind of view filtering, this view creation to specify when you want your kind of automation to run.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. So whenever something enters this view, that's what we want to trigger our zap on. So coming back to our zap, let's go here. So what am I doing here? Airtable.
Yep.
Base, right, sorry. When you do something like a million times and it's just autopilot, but then you take a moment and you're like, what am I doing? I was like, what base do they want? What is a base? So this is live stream number 19. It's just saying, okay, what Airtable base. So bases are what I'm showing you. You could have multiple bases that you can be working out of. Table, we want the video submissions table. And then what view? Our view is going to be that accepted videos.
Yeah.
Right? So let's go ahead and test the trigger, see what record it's going to pull up. So it's just going to kind of pull up one of these recent videos. Let's see. It's the test at Gmail. Let's actually just move the one we just received. So let's go into our reviewing view. So this is the one we just received, right? And let's say, you know what? This one status is accepted. Now what's going to happen is going to leave this view, right? Because our filter is any of received. So once we've accepted, it's no longer in our received view. It's going to go into accepted. You'll notice it filters out. So that knows we have inbox 0. We don't have anything to review. And it's going to pop up in our accepted videos. It's right here.
Cool.
Right? Make this a little larger here. Boom. So now let's go back. Let's get that one. So I just want to test again. If I come back, it should get me a better. Load more. Let's see what record F is. There we go.
Okay.
It's a video. So, it just, Zapier is just giving us that information. It said the email, in the email field, I have a Korenblit plus test. The video link is this. So it's just telling us what it saw in that record so that we can then use in subsequent steps. Right? So what do we want to do? Well, what we want to do is create a Webflow CMS item.
Yeah.
Right? So write that out, Webflow. Choose action event. We're going to create a live item. So we're going to create a live item in one of our CMS collections. Webflow account. I've got the keys to the FinSuite account. Let me actually just quickly hide you guys because I need to. There we go. So now I've selected my website, and then the collection is going to be videos. Now this could be job postings, it could be whatever. And what Zapier is going to go do is go get the information from the CMS and say, here's every field that's in that CMS.
Yeah.
Right. So now when I click, I can actually see the information from step 1. I can see my Airtable's information. So we're going to fill in that information. So whenever that Zap triggers, it's going to take that information from Airtable and it's going to send it to Webflow. So now what we got to say is what variable goes where in Webflow. So we're essentially creating a one-to-one mapping with Webflow. So link to video. Let's show all options. There's going to be quite a bit of them. So let's just look for a YouTube link here.
Wow, it gives you a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it also gives you kind of metadata around some like thumbnail width, height, URL, right? So one field could have a lot of metadata around it. So that's, just really getting granular into what you're able to send. And this is actually going to be very useful because I remember back in the day, I couldn't send attachments from Airtable to Webflow because it didn't have the actual kind of hosting URL, right? And now we have that right here. So, oops, let's remove that with. So I can actually send that information through. So
That's
continuing here, actually speaking of which, let's thumbnail. Let's add that in.
Yeah.
Full URL. There we go. Now, category, that's our single select. Right here. However, this is the workaround they're going to probably spend 30 minutes on at the end is that you can't send text to a single select. So I can't just put the word live stream. I can't put the value. This is one of the limitations of Webflow's integration with Zapier. And so that I need to do that differently. And that's what we're going to do in the next step, right? So we're actually going to do some custom code, and I'll explain everything about that custom code to get there. So few things here. So video length, all of that information, I don't want to go through mapping. It's going to take a little time, but all of that information could live in Airtable, and you could send it. So publish date, same thing. Name, let's get that from step 1. Where's that name? Video title.
You can search.
So this is one thing. I'm terrible at naming fields in Airtable. So you see it's name in Webflow and video title in Airtable. So this is just,
it's all good.
You know, you'd think I'd be better at it, doing it every day, day in and day out. But
I guess you glossed over it, or maybe I missed it, but how did you put the single reference field?
We haven't.
Oh, you haven't yet?
Yeah. So actually what we're going to do, maybe like some foreshadowing here, is that we're going to create the live item, right? So we're going to send the information, and then we're going to add some custom code via API that is going to update that information with the multi-reference field.
Okay. Now this is where it gets hairy. Okay. All right. I'm waiting for that.
So most people are probably going to click through to this, to the next part. So let me just make sure I have at least, so tools is that multi-reference field. We can't do it. But the rest, so small tip here, if you ever do this and you want to add some rich text, Airtable is Markdown, Webflow is HTML. There is a formatter step in Zapier to turn Markdown into HTML. So all you do is you add a step to take Markdown, turn it into HTML, and then it'll send it to Webflow. Do you want me to show you how to do that?
Later. Let's just keep going. That is the nail in the coffin for Google Sheets. Go. I'm so excited now.
Good. Yeah, awesome.
Did not know you can do that.
Yeah, you can do anything. Honestly, there's very, very few limitations within Airtable to Webflow that can be worked around with, 30 minutes of Connor's time, or, Mackenzie Child, or Matthew, Matthew.
Or you.
Yeah, maybe. I mostly just I'm inspired by those folks. So a test item was sent to you. So that means we've just created. So we should have, it's a video. If I refresh this, pro tip, refresh, like a full refresh. Don't just change in and out of the CMS for it to appear. This has been a little bit the bane of my existence. Thinking that it was sent, not sent. There we go. We have 20 videos instead of 19 now.
Okay.
It's a video. It's there.
Yay.
We've got the thumbnail. We've got the URL, right? But no category and no tools.
Cool.
Okay?
Yeah. Okay,
now,
here we go.
All right. This is the moment. So I actually need to do like a digression around Airtable's API. So I'll introduce what an API is, and then we'll talk a little bit about Airtable's API. And then we're going to say how to update multi-reference fields using the API, essentially. So Webflow API. So an API, for those who are, unfamiliar with it is a very fancy and complicated word to say that you're actually just going to send someone a parameter, and it's going to return you some information. So actually, every time you enter a URL, that's actually an API call. An API call that sends to Google that says, send Nelson the HTML of the page of Google, right? So it's essentially just kind of browsers to put it, speaking to each other to say, hey, I need this piece of data. Can you send it to me? Oh, I need to update that piece of data. And to do that, there's like some parameters. First, you need to authenticate. You need to make sure, like, are you actually Aron? Are you actually Nelson? Do you have access to this website? So that's kind of like authentication. And then you need to say, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to pull information, right? Do you want some information from Webflow? Do you want to update information? So APIs are just a way of codifying machines talking amongst each other. So I know that there's probably developers who are going to kind of disagree with what I'm saying, but that's kind of like the no-code view of what an API is. And in the narrow world of Webflow, we're going to do two things. We're going to say, hey, I have access to this Webflow website. That's going to be authentication. And then it's going to be like, okay, what do you want? What do you want to do? So some of the things you can do is, give me all the collections in this website. That's what get sites, site ID collections means. It's going to get all of the collections.
Yeah.
So then it's going to say, okay, well, for a specific, item, give me all items for a collection, right?
Okay.
So when you're pulling information from a service, that's a get call. So get that information for me. In our case, what we want to do is update information. We've just created that CMS ID, and what we want is to update it with the multi-reference field. Right?
Yeah.
So Connor, going forward, I'm only going to reference the multi-reference field. Connor telling me that a single reference, I think you can update in the Zap, but a multi-reference, you need custom code. But we'll do both. I think it'd actually be a good kind of explanation of how it works. So get is going to say, okay, well, get all of the collections. What we want to do is update live collection item. Does that make sense, Nelson, so far?
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Cool. So the type of call is a put. So that's saying we want to update that information in Webflow. And then it's going to say, well, okay, well, what information, where in this Webflow website do you want to update something? So we're going to input a collection ID, your favorite variable that you can copy paste very easily. And then what item do you want to update? And then you're going to put the item ID, right? And then finally, what fields do you want to update? So this here on the right is just a fancy way of saying exactly what I just said. So it's going to say, I want to update information, right? I want to update information here. So in a specific item in this collection, and here's the information I want to update.
Okay.
So we're just going to kind of take this structure, redo the exact same thing, and we're going to update two fields. We're going to update the single reference field, and then we're going to update the multi-reference field of the CMS item we just created. Now we have all of this information, right? We know what we need to call. We know what the URL is. We just ping this collection. We're always going to ping the same collection. And in the previous step, we created this item. So this is more like painting by numbers, right? It doesn't matter if you kind of understand what the API is or what it does. Just plug and play the information you already have into, Zapier. So we're actually going to do this from Zapier. So we have that ID, right? So this is the item ID of what we just created and the collection ID. And now we're just going to plug and play this information into what we just saw. So, oops, no, I don't. I'm not back to setup. So next, we're going to use webhooks. So don't worry about what webhooks are. So now there's kind of some preset options. Get, post. So get is pulling information. Post is inputting information to another system. Put is updating information. Again, broad terms. Don't use this outside of no code. So what we want is a custom request. And it's just because the way the API is structured, you need to use a custom request. But if you watch this video, you'll kind of understand why. I tried doing it with a put request, but the structure of Zapier doesn't let us do that. So our method, we're going to send a put. The URL, and all I'm going to do is like paint by numbers. So our URL is this right here. So just going to copy paste this like that. Go into here, right? And so this is always going to be the same. This is going to come from the previous step, right? So it's asking, what collection do you want to update? Well, we have that information in step 2, collection ID.
Okay.
Right? Let's just make sure that it's the one we want. 5E5 Webflow. Let's go into that settings. Right here, 5E5, same thing. Essentially, we're just plugging that number in. And then what item? Well, we just created this as well, right? So let's go into step 2. Let's get that ID. Right? Again, 5F5988. Let's make sure we're talking about the same thing. This is this one right here. It's a video. 5F5988, same thing, right?
Okay.
Next step here. Okay, data passed through is false. That's just the default setting. Don't need to worry about that. And then data. So this is telling, okay, now that you have access to that API, if you do ping it, what fields do you want to update? If we refer to the API, I'm just going to move you a little bit out the way here so folks can see. It's this right here. So it's saying, okay, which fields do you want to update? So let's kind of just copy paste this, take the fields. So fields is what I want to update. Let's start.
So this is the custom code part.
Yes, this is the custom code. This little JSON is the only thing that you actually need to kind of wrap your head around. And this is, it's relatively simple in terms of just plugging and playing information. There are a few, might walk into some issues of formatting, but it really is the biggest challenge is formatting. So here fields, if I look at the example, it says, okay, put the variable, the field from your CMS between kind of quotes to, and then put what you want that field to be, right? So let's say if we were to run this put, it would set this item's name to updated exciting blog post title. Maybe just as an example to make sure everything works, let's update the name to this works. That's it. That is our put call. And now we need to authenticate. So these are the headers. This lets you authenticate. So if we look at authentication, it's right here, the H. So first we need an authorization. So this is just telling Webflow that we are allowed to use this API. That's it. So what we're going to do, a little thing here, I actually keep my API keys in Alfred, so I can always copy paste them. Bearer.
Side note, to get your Webflow API key, it's in your project settings under integrations.
Yeah. Do you think it's worth showing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We'll configure this.
If you're cool with people having your API key right now.
Oh, I mean, it's right there. I'm going to change it after the stream.
There you go.
I have to, so there's no way of doing this without. So
everyone use it right now. Hurry up.
Update my website, Put cool content on it, though, if you will. So essentially, there are 3 other headers. And this is just, if this is going to be a source of mistakes for folks, you need to say that it's version 1.00 of the API. In addition to authentication, in case Webflow ever releases another version of their API. And finally, content type. You're saying that you're sending JSON in the fields. So again, this doesn't really matter. Okay. So if we run this call, what should this do, Nelson?
It should update the name field to this works.
Awesome. So let's see if this works. Let me just make sure. I think that should be, I think that should work. Okay.
Thanks, Colleen, for linking that.
So we've got invalid request. Let's figure out what we're doing wrong here. So this is where your heart starts beating. So maybe one of the first things I'm wondering is, do we need to input? So we're missing a little bracket here. Just putting the whole thing between brackets. Okay.
Yeah, but did you republish your site just in case?
I don't think it's a publication.
Mm.
Yeah. I actually do have, I prepared because I knew I'm not that good. I can see what the error is. Ooh, do we have name as a capital? No. Do we have a space here? Let me make sure. So fields, Oh, I know what happened. Oh no, field like that, curly bracket like that. Huh. Name. If I copy paste this. Oh, it is a patch call. You're totally right. So the funny thing is I made this mistake before. So put is for inputting information, updating, patches for updating. Fraser, you just
That
saved
makes
me.
more sense because get means I want to get stuff from you. Put
Right.
means I want to put stuff into something. And patch means I need to patch this up. I need to.
You're totally
You know.
right. My God, that could have been. Let's see. Maybe that's not it. All right. Fraser for the win.
Yay!
Thank God.
Patch. So
Okay.
get things, put things back on the shelf, and then patch. I need to patch up the shelf.
Exactly.
There.
So let's just make sure that that worked. This works.
Yay!
Okay. So that was step one. So now we know how to update any piece of information, right? But the one we want to update is this single select. We're going to do that one first, right? Now, how you should think about this is essentially this references another CMS. And each one of those CMS has a CMS ID. So the reason you can't just put the word live chat is that Webflow is expecting the reference of the other CMS. So what I mean by that is live chat. If I go into video categories, I go into live chat. It's not expecting the word live chat. It's expecting this item ID.
Yep.
So what we need to do for a single select is just pass the item ID in Zapier. Now, we're going to take 35 minutes back here. We're going to go back into our Airtable and say, well, we need that information in Airtable, right? If we want to pass a CMS ID in Zapier, it needs to exist in Airtable. So what you'll notice is that next to each tag, I've referenced a CMS item. That's the CMS item ID in Webflow. And you do that once, right? And so you do it once. Every time you create a new video category or job type, you add a CMS ID. And what you can do in Airtable, coming back to that discussion before of what is the difference between Airtable and Google Sheets, except everything, literally everything, but is that you can pull information from different tables once you've linked them together.
Yeah.
Right? So what I mean by that is you'll notice that I've connected this video to the linked record live stream. So now what I can do is I can look up that CMS ID and I can do that across the board. So in this kind of, I've pulled in the CMS item. And when you look right here, CMS item formatted, it's just our CMS ID with little squiggly marks on each side. And that, formats it in a way that Zapier understands. Right? And
I would
then
like to see you make that, please.
Yeah, sure.
How?
So this is a formula field. So formula
There it
field,
is.
Yeah? You've seen this before?
No. I'm like, that's where the craziness is. I'm like, when do I put things?
So essentially, we're doing all of this just to format we're just putting little things on each side, right?
Yeah.
Because Webflow expects the data in that format, right? So we're just adding a little squiggly mark on each side, and that's what we're going to send to Webflow. Does that make sense? I see some...
Yes.
So I'll kind of show you the here. So I think it's easier to kind of understand if I go to here. All we're saying is that we're just going to take that field from Airtable and we're going to say the category is equal to that. That's it. So all we did was put squiggly apostrophes. What do you call those?
I say double quote.
Double quotes. we're putting double quotes on each side. I think you could have done this in Zapier where you put a little double quote, put the CMS item, put another double quote on the other side.
Yeah.
Connor will confirm. And apparently you can do single reference field in the create live item. So up to you how you decide to do this. But what's important to know is that Webflow expects a CMS item in double quotes.
Yeah.
So let's give it what it expects. So let's update here. So instead of name, what we want is category. Let's just make sure we've written that right. So videos. Category. Do not capitalize. Made that mistake multiple times. All single caps, category. And then pass in that CMS item ID. Right? So this 5E5 FA5, that should be live stream if everything went properly.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just go. Video categories, live stream, 5E5 FA, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Right? So we're passing that parameter. I don't think there's anything else. We've put it between quiggly marks. We've got little double quotes here. If everything worked, which again, you never know with these things, as you saw before. Retest action. It worked. So now, wait. Doesn't, let's make sure it works properly. Don't. That's, you have to, what's great about this, you only set it up once. Once you set it up, you're good to go.
Yeah. And then someone asks you in the future, like a couple of months from now, and you're rusty at it, and they're like, "Oh, can you do this for me?" And you're like,
"Yeah,
yeah."
That's what you. So I'll share the
dust off my notes.
So we've got our category. So it worked.
Huzzah!
Right? Boom. So Connor, even though you can do it in the step before, I was happy to do it in the code. I'm happy that it worked. But now that was step one. 2-step multi-reference is next.
Yes, there we go. Now I'm like, okay.
Now, so here's the thing with this is that it's not very different from single reference. So this one is the old one. So let's come here. Apologies for the back and forth. Except that when you think about, you need to put multiple items. So it's expecting an array. It's expecting a table. So it's saying, okay, you can't just give me a bunch of CMS items. They need to be formatted in a certain way. How they need to be formatted, just quickly, I'll show you here in the kind of code editor, is bracket open, no dot, bracket close, and saying CMS item 1, close, dot, CMS item 2.
Dot or, it's comma.
Apostrophe, comma, sorry.
Yeah. So this is making an array.
Right. And so essentially it's saying, okay, pass CMS item 1, pass CMS item 2 in that specific format, and then it's going to go find those reference fields to map to what you're trying to add. So it's not so different from what we just did. The only difference is that we need to take this, add its little buddy or whatever tools are used in this video, and format it in this way. So what we're going to do, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to format this in Airtable. So Airtable is going to output everything between the brackets. So all we're going to have to do is set up those two brackets, plug what we're getting from Airtable, and run the API call.
Yes.
It's getting late. I'm like talking with my hands now.
It's okay. It's okay. This is the good part. This is
what
the main event.
So I want to come back here to right here, tools.
Okay.
So now we have two linked records. When you look up information, I'm just going to move you a little bit here. when you look up information from Airtable, when you have multiple linked records, right? So when we looked up one item, one linked record, it returned one CMS item. When you look up multiple, it actually puts it in an array for you. It puts a comma between the two. So if I was just to look up CMS ID, I'm going to use a lookup field. So this is saying, okay, what linked record? We want tools. That's the one right here. So here are all the options from the tools table.
Okay.
So I want CMS item. Save that. And it formats it. Let me make this a little larger. So this is telling us that for Zapier, that's our reference. The CMS item is 5E7571964.
Okay.
And the second one, the one for Airtable, is 5EF5 blah, 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 B2D. And it gets this information right here from the tools table. So I have the CMS item ID. These are exactly the same as in Webflow. However, the only thing is that they're not formatted properly. They don't have the little squiggly marks. So what we do is just like we did before, is add squiggly marks, air quotes. Air quotes? Are we calling them double quotes?
Double quotes.
Double quotes. So we're adding double quotes on each side of them. Double quotes. There we go. And then when we look up that field instead, it comes formatted as we'd like. So it's got double quote, CMS item, double quote, comma, double quote, CMS. And if I was to add a third tool here, parabola, it updates automatically. So when that record is submitted, we already have the reference field formatted as we want. So it's sent to Zapier, so it can be sent to our API call.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I'm waiting for you to add the double quotes.
The double quotes are how do I add the double quotes?
Yes.
I add them same way I did before.
You're doing that concatenate thing.
Yeah.
See, that I need you to copy paste that, and that's the thing. That's the key to all of this.
It is the key.
That's the part that gets me confused.
Yeah. So
I need
essentially
that in my life.
So Matt asked a great question. How do you add the comma? And this is really interesting. And I think this kind of maybe take a moment here. This speaks to how great Airtable and Webflow are in terms of thinking of structure of data, right? And so Airtable, when you look up multiple fields or multiple linked record and you look up a field, it'll format it as an array. So it actually adds the comma automatically. So what I mean by that is that here, let me move this a little to the left. Look up CMS ID, and let's move the tools as well here. One to the right. Okay, so Zapier's CMS ID is this first one. And because we have multiple tools here, it's going to separate them with a comma. So imagine you had, a class with students and you looked up all the names of the students. You would have in that field, that lookup field, all the names separated by a comma.
How come the lookup CMS ID column doesn't have double quotes, but the one with the CMS IDs do?
Right. And that's because we've formatted in that way. So I'll break this. Let's say let's concatenate the word cat. Right? So now you'll notice that here in the formatted ID, it just ends with the word cat. So we've just formatted that CMS ID in the way that we want. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Okay. Yeah. Where are you pulling the data for your other lookup from?
So essentially here, for every tool, I map it to a CMS item, which I took from Webflow.
Yeah, I got that part. But if you go back to video submissions view, and then the one that you just showed us the lookup CMS ID, to the right. That one. That doesn't have double quotes.
Yes, you're right. And that's because I'm looking up the CMS item ID field without the double quotes.
Formatted ones.
Exactly.
Okay,
This one is
cool.
formatted. This one is unformatted. That's a
There we
totally,
go.
that makes total
Okay, now I
sense.
got it.
Awesome. So now we have our format. And the reason we're formatting it in Airtable is because it's very difficult to format in Zapier. Very easy to
Yes.
format in Airtable, very difficult to format in Zapier. So now we have our array that all we need to do is just plug into that whole setup we had before. So coming here, let's go into here and then comma. So this comma is just to say, okay, it's a new field, right, that we're adding. This is from the API call. So you notice that when you specify fields, there's always a little comma here, and then you start a new field that we're updating. Our new field that we're updating is tools. And now we're going to add those brackets. So this is saying, okay, there's an array in here, but we've already created everything in that array. So in step 1, CMS tools, and we have CMS IDs for API. This is, again, terrible naming of fields. Do better on your end. This should be called tools Webflow. I don't know. I'm actually really terrible at this. So you'll notice that it's formatted the way we want. And now we have that array of inputting that multi-reference field.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed here. Seems to work. So just let's make sure we understand what it's going to do. This is sending 5EF whatever. And this is from this one right here. So it should send Zapier and Airtable as the two tools used in that video. Done editing. Let's test it. Retest action. Boom.
Huzzah.
Bada boom. Refresh. It's actually quite good that I have to refresh. It gives you that little bit of like anxiety, a little bit of stress to see if it worked.
Please, 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 please.
Yeah. It's kind of fun to do with like other people. Some people just come to the stream to see me sweat, and I appreciate those people. Here we go. This works. Bada boom. Zapier and Airtable. So now we've sent that reference field and it's updated. It's always kind of anticlimactic because we're kind of just working within the CMS, Webflow CMS. But for folks who are here, this is exciting. This is extremely exciting. It was really exciting to me anyway. Okay, so now, we have that whole flow. The last step is actually updating the information in Airtable to say like, hey, we've created the CMS item. It's accepted. It's added to your website. So that's something else we're going to end here with. Let's update record. Airtable again. We're going to update a record. Let's do this. Our base is going to be, I have a lot of bases, as you can imagine. Video submissions, record. We're going to take a custom value, and we're going to take that record ID. So this is a unique identifier for each record in Airtable, so it can find the right one. This is Airtable's equivalent to the CMS item. So everything we did before to say what base, what table, you can think of those as collections. And now we're saying what item ID are we going to use? We're going to use record ID from step 1. And then all we want to do is update the status. What are our options here? Let's add published. Like that. Let's give a little rejected as a little red here. There we go. That feels like makes more sense.
Yeah.
So published. We're just going to put the word published like that because we know it's been published. And I did have CMS ID. If I'm not mistaken, CMS ID should be empty. There we go, CMS ID. This is just so you have a key between Airtable and Webflow of the CMS ID you just created, that item ID. So you can always reference to be like, oh, like where can I find this information in Webflow? So just some good practice here. Always have that CMS ID from Webflow sent back to Airtable to make it easier to link your data in the future, to be able to find the right CMS item. So we're just going to write back. We're going to update this with the create live item. And we're going to just add that ID. Okay. Continue. If all went well here, we should update. A test record was just sent. That was not all submissions. So now it's published. Woohoo! Boom. And we've got the CMS ID. So
end scene.
Boom. Now we need to turn it on. And the moment I always worry about is let's do another one. Let's just do, let's copy paste this. Let's turn the Zap on.
Cool.
Okay.
What? Here, let me fill out the form. Can you put a
Yeah,
link?
go for it. Yeah, go for it. Here, I'll send you. Do you want me to send it in Zoom?
Oh yeah. Send it in Zoom.
Okay.
All right. So I'm gonna do it on my end. Submit your video. Let's see. Let me get a.
There you go.
All right.
So look,
And you might be thinking, which video is Nelson going to submit? And then you're gonna see it, and you're like, of course, come on. Like, what else would he do? All right, so I'm gonna submit my video. My email address is something like this .com. And then what is your video called? Flying no falling with style. You know that quote?
no. What is that?
Toy Story.
Oh my God. You clearly
Toy
have
Story
a child.
1.
Clearly you're more on those kids movies than I am.
So,
how many times have you watched it?
Huh?
How many times have you watched it with your little girl?
Oh, 0 times on
What?
Toy Story 1.
Oh God.
But I'll, soon enough I'll show her all the things. I mean, she's into Thomas the Train right now, so but what kid isn't? So we'll get there.
Feels like a good start.
Right. So I'm filling out the form, and I lost. Hold on, where is my? Oh, it's right in front of me. There it is. Attach file for my thumbnail. Okay, select files to upload. Let's see here. Desktop. That one. Upload. Couldn't you just get the YouTube thumbnail from, since Airtable already does all the metadata?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you might still have to do it through Zapier because Airtable doesn't fetch the metadata around the YouTube. So it doesn't actually parse the link that you put into Airtable to be like, hey, what is the thumbnail around this? However, you could very easily do that with Zapier as well. I think you've done that before.
Yeah, there's a free open graph. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
Yay!
All right. So I'm moving this into received. And you can create an automation to automatically put it as received. Okay. Whew. No pressure here. Let me just make sure that my Zap is on.
Yep, it is on.
Okay. No pressure. Let's move this into accepted. And if all goes well here, it should update to published.
So how long does it usually take?
So I don't know. I don't think it's an instant Zap. So let me just run it. I don't think so. I'm just gonna run it manually.
Oh, okay. So it's like every 15 minutes or something, depending on your plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So it seemed like it worked.
Okay.
Boom. Published. Bada bing boom.
Yay!
It has a CMS item ID, so that worked properly. If we refresh this, I'm actually quite proud of myself, and I'm proud of you, Nelson. We did it.
Oh, no, it's all you, man. I'm learning off of you.
You say that, but then you're gonna go and implement this and make it better, and then I'll stream what you built. This is like a
Well,
perpetual motion
that's the
machine.
beauty of the web right
Right.
there, man.
There you
I
go,
mean,
following in
we're not
style.
Wait, so
Thumbnail.
here's the okay. I'm gonna be very, very honest,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things that I'm like,
This.
yes, you
Yes,
know what
I
I'm
know.
talking.
You just have to like click enter, or you have to like copy paste it, and it works.
So if you're an automator, you've probably ran through this. If you're getting into this,
There you go.
why doesn't the Webflow CMS actually activate the video field?
Yeah.
Okay, when you're doing something automation or inputting it with a CSV,
Yeah.
it's because Webflow is pinging the Embeddly API. Embeddly is a service where you can embed stuff into your own software application, and it excuse me, it makes sure that it is a legit URL. And what Webflow is doing is saying, when you put the URL in, it sends a note, it sends a ping, it sends a signal to Embeddly saying, hey, such and such posted this YouTube video. Is it legit? And Embeddly would be like, hold on, let me check for you. Yeah, it's legit. And then Webflow's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna enable this. However, when you're doing this whole automation stuff,
Yeah.
you're just putting it in, and it never starts that signal from Webflow to talk to Embeddly, and Embeddly back to Webflow. It doesn't start that. So you have to go into the CMS, press space, and then backspace, and then it works. So if you're ever wondering, how come it doesn't work when I import a CSV or when I'm doing it Zapier, Airtable, Zapier, Parabola, Integromat, that is why. The engineers know about it, but it's out of my control, and it's just one of those things I wish it would be fixed. But software dev isn't a perfect thing. It's never a straightforward thing, and one day.
So I wonder if there was like a way maybe you can embed it just the URL, but it does do a lot of work for you, right? Of like, creating that click button. So it does feel like you're right. I actually just once a week just like go and like, do all that work, but eventually I'm sure it'll be fixed. Hopefully, I when it will be, we'll be the happiest folks. And so we've got the category is right. We've got those tools that multi-reference work properly, and we've done it. So now you can think of just so many things you can do from here. Member management. So if you have an integration with MemberStack, you can do something very similar. If you ever want to accept folks into your community, job postings, you could filter folks, like folks who are abusive. I don't know. There's just any kind of approval process can be done now. So for folks kind of wondering like, what is the next step? Parabola is really interesting, and like it can auto sync. So if you ever are editing information in Webflow, for whatever reason, you want to send that back to Airtable. So you can do that using Parabola, just like sync that data every hour. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm just really excited that it worked. I'm excited that we got through it. And yeah, so there's a question in the chat from Matt. How do you make the multi-reference column in Airtable? That's a lookup field. In the show notes, I will include a link to the Zap. I will include a link to the base itself. And in the base, I'm actually going to explicit the code that I write, because I don't think when you share the Zap, it actually includes the code. So I'll include everything that's needed in the base itself. So you can kind of go and copy paste and structure this base however you want. And I will clean it up, give it better field names and things like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Cool.
So much for sharing with the community. It's always fun to learn. It's that whole concatenate. Please put that in your show notes in bold. Sure. Make it H1. I don't know, but concatenate. That's the magical key that puts the double quotes, the air quotes, the curly cues whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it, around the CMS IDs, which can also become arrays. And that's the part that always gets me confused. And that's the one that I need. And I am definitely changing over to Airtable. It's going to take me a while, but it's all a process of learning and streamlining and making things much better. Thank you for teaching me and the rest of the no code community. And thank claps in chat for Aron
Thank you.
and
No, it's been a pleasure. I really, really appreciate, and I'm excited for you to come back in, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks and 4 weeks and show me what you've built in Airtable, and then I'll stream that. And your process is going to be so tricked out and really cool. So yeah, so I'm really excited to see what you build. And again, huge thanks for inspiring myself and I'm sure a bunch of others in terms of maybe publishing content, but also just being a contributor or a great contributor to the no code community. So I don't think we'll meet again at No Code Conference, but I'm so glad that we got a chance to stream together, and hopefully we'll make this recurring.
yeah, anytime. Let me know.
Yeah.
This has been fun. And to everyone in my chat, thank you all so much for being here. Again, Aron, since we're multi-streaming, go ahead and shout out your links where people can watch your streams and learn more about you.
Yeah. So I've got the Essential Guide to Airtable, which is a free class on Airtable at aatt.io. I stream on Wednesdays, usually at 6 p.m. Eastern, and just youtube.com/c/automate all the things. I do this for fun, so I try to keep a regular schedule, but you can go to aatt.io/calendar to see all upcoming streams. I will have 1 or 2 next week. I can announce on Monday what we'll do then. So, really excited, to keep streaming. This is so much fun. I'm really just glad that folks enjoy this and get value from it. And really couldn't thank you enough for coming on today. And just keep doing what you're doing, Nelson. And it's been great. Can't say much more.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks.
And for your channel subscribers, I'm over at youtube.com/pixelgeek. Join the community over at pixelgeek.community. I stream every Saturday at 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Pacific time. So this has been just an honor to be part of your community. And if you haven't subscribed to Aron, please do so, everyone. Thank you, Aron.
Same.
I'm going to eat dinner now.
All right, folks, go subscribe to Nelson. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you soon, man. Have a good one. Talk soon.